I'm super excited because this morning I really just wanted this to be fun. I wanted it to be a fun morning, and Patrick Rife definitely brings the fun. So he is the owner and founder of Pixelated Photo Booth. But it's funny, I met with Patrick, and he is so much more than like the operator of a photo booth. And in fact, that became clear, and he knows this. And he said, I took a photo booth off of my business card. So he helps businesses. He helped us. Like last night, I gave him Facebook admin, and all of a sudden we have 50 more people that are following us now. So right now, Pixelated Photo Booth has 7 photo booths in Maryland, DC, Philadelphia, and San Francisco. Patrick got his degree from UNBC in art history. So really, I think he specializes in branding and marketing and social media and engaging with businesses on how to make their events and their brand better and more engaging with their audience. So, for instance, they write a really great blog, and I went on their blog last night, and he's like, let's have a blog post about how to utilize this Instagram hyperlapse. And I was like, great, this is going to be great information. He's like, okay, we're going to show you a sample, and this is me in a banana costume running down the street. And I was like, that's perfect, because it's something really serious, but he turns it into something really exciting and energetic. So, with no further ado, Patrick.
They didn't hire us again for a long time after that, so we kind of thought.
What's a photo bomber?
It's not loud enough.
What's a photo bomber?
A photo bomber is someone when someone says, let me get a photo of you, and you're like, yeah, sure, this is my mom, and then the guy that pops up between you and bunny ears you, that would be the photo bomber. So Kevin Spacey was the guy running into the shot at the last minute and kind of crashing into people. There's a lot of those shots, but they're not quite as fun as that one is. So I was asked by Katie to come and talk about crossing over this morning, and I think how that applies to me is in a series of ways. I am 34 years old. I have 2 little boys and a wife, and spent the majority of my life making music with the intention of making that record. And kind of pursued that till I was, I guess, 26 or so, and went to Europe for a bit, and I chose to, my wife and I, girlfriend at the time, we were going to move to New York afterwards so I could get closer to making that record. While we were in Europe, I was like, God, marry this girl for sure. So when I came back, I kind of started thinking about it, and my wife is a very, very disciplined and incredible academic, and she had really supported us by her diligence to having traction inside of the world of having a career. And I thought that that I really wanted to complement that. So I went to the community college. During the whole fall was a teacher of mine. I can remember so totally clearly. For drawing classes, I can't draw at all. I'm definitely an art maker now, but I can't draw at all. I also can't write very well. And I remember taking these drawings and being like, yeah, draw this tree outside, and I would draw the tree, and I would flip the drawing over on the drawing board and just grind it for 15 minutes, and then it was this total kind of blown out drawing of something. And I can remember her being like, well, that's a certain perspective, and me being like, this is what I'm doing. This is just what I'm doing. This is my perspective. Like, I can't draw trees, so like, this is the get it on the paper, and then I'm gonna like put my lens on top of it. So fast forward, I knew I would always make music, and it became less important to move to Manhattan to make music. It became more important to start to really break down what I had done so far in my life up to that point, and figure out the things that were valuable to me, and things that had worked, and maybe more importantly, the things that hadn't worked, and maybe why they hadn't worked. I was definitely a really confident young man when I was making music, but I didn't know how to make it, because it's all about autonomy. But at that point in time, it was, and I wasn't focused on the things that would really transition into being successful. I was the type of person that instead of going out and networking at night, which would be closing the record store and going for years, I went home and made music in my studio, which accelerated the craft, but it really decelerated the connections to make records with people and play important shows and kind of do that stuff, participating, as I now realize, in a community, because I didn't really want to be. I wanted to be in a community, but I didn't want to have to invest the time. I just wanted to invest the time and being home and doing that kind of stuff. So I will digress so much. Has anybody read The Catcher in the Rye? Everyone's read The Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah.
When they're talking in front of the room and they start to digress, they yell digression. So if at any point I start to split, you guys are like, man, again, somebody just do it. It'll be fun. It'll be funny. I gave Katie the permission to bring a bullhorn, and she didn't. So bullhorn, whistle me, whistle at me. So at any rate, BCCC for a bit. Then I transitioned to UMBC, and I didn't like their arts program, their studio arts program for me, because it was a commercial arts program. At that point in time, I just had a hint that I might want to make visual art, but I wasn't really practicing that. I kind of just thought like, I feel like I could have some place here. So I was like, I'll study art history. I will handle art for the rest of my life. I had a really good friend who is a really well-respected handler at the NGA, and we came up in very similar places, and I've gotten to watch him, and he really loves it, has an incredible life, and I thought, that would be great. So I went to UMBC and I studied art history, and while I was there, I had to take studio classes, and oddly, my exposure to their commercial studio classes turned me into a visual art maker, because it showed me all of these kind of small resources. And for my personality, dabbling is always the best thing. I've never really sought to master anything at all. If anything, I seek to not master things, because I'm much more interested in the process of getting to know it. Generally speaking, I'll learn about something far enough to make a noise, or to make it make sense in some sense, and then I'll stop. And at that point, I'll switch to my intuition, because I'm more interested in the way that my brain will rearrange the way that I approach that thing. And the only way that I can make sure that my approach to something is idiosyncratic and representative of me is by setting off on my own path of learning and making it. So I go to UMBC, get this art history degree, start making art. I get a grant when I'm there to make this sculpture that uses about 9,000 vinyl records in one week kind of monolith. And that really piqued my curiosity and my taste for creating art. And I started to realize that having been in a band, you have to create value for everyone else in your band, because those guys are helping you. It's like the age-old thing of the band. Like there's the band, and everybody should be equal parts. But then there's almost always, not always, but almost always, somebody that's at home at night that's not coming to the bar, that's like writing music, or that's really kind of like thinking about it, really living with it, and bringing the ideas. But you can't carry them out without people's help, so you have to figure out, you have to negotiate how to, have them be vested in what they're doing while protecting whatever your creation is, and making sure that it gets translated in a way that is still true to what you had in mind. So I started making art, and I'm like, this is great. Nobody's opinion. I don't have to be like an acoustic guitar dude alone on my own. I get to like have total control of this world, and I don't have to go out and play shows like every week because I'm not really that person that wants to be out promoting myself like that. I'm much more the person that wants to make interesting things, and hopefully have those speak loud enough that I don't have to do that. I a little struck where I am. I'm used to that. At any rate, so I come out of UMBC and I'm psyched about making artwork, and I turn this, what started as 9,000 record sculpture, just one thing, one idea, and then all of a sudden I've got, when you start collecting records, and I've sourced them all for free, and if you get to 9,000, it doesn't stop there, so then like I really exploded again, so I had all these records, and I started like, and I made all these other pieces of art, and then I started making volumes of all those other pieces of art, and now it's this giant monolith of an exhibition that may or may not ever show. It just slowly grows and grows and grows. But I'm doing all of that. The economy tanks, which we're in MICA, so everybody knows what that means for arts jobs. It was pretty grim. I put myself through school hanging DirecTV satellite dishes. I'm a very blue-collar dude at heart. I grew up in a small suburb of Baltimore City called Dundalk. Anyone that's from Baltimore knows the story about Dundalk. I am not representative of your idea. So everyone, focus. I'm going to challenge you to challenge your concept of neighborhoods and the people that are inside of them and the value that they can produce. Because there's a very tight part of this story that aligns with, are there any kids in the room at all? I talk so much better when I can curse. Okay. There's a lot of shit on your shoulders when you grow up with that kind of stuff. And everyone wants to say that they're big enough that it doesn't affect them. And I hope that over the course of the next 10 minutes, you guys will get an idea that I would be the perfect archetype for being able to beat that. But I didn't beat it, and I didn't beat it for years and years and years. And that is something that was so closely related to not succeeding when I was trying to make music in my 20s, because I felt like everyone knew where I was from in my city, and I thought, first things first is I'm getting struck out of the circle because of that. And that's crazy to think about now, and in hindsight, I'm very proud of it, and I didn't intend to even say this. I don't intend to say anything I'm saying, I don't know. I'm just going with it. I have no plan today. I actually thought that Katie was going to be like, so talk about this, and I was going to be like, oh yeah. So I'm just ad-libbing. That said, it's really important to me. Just in the same way, in a larger sense, Baltimore is a perfect analog to that analogy as it goes onto the East Coast. Baltimore is the Dundalk of the East Coast, and Baltimore is fucking awesome. We have so much potential right now. And I've been speaking lately, and things hit me, and I realized a new way to phrase it, and it's not a new way to phrase it, it's just come into my personal vernacular, but Baltimore's been waiting for its renaissance for 55 years now, and it's going to happen, and all of us are going to see it, because it's not going to happen in 35 years, it's going to happen right now. And I know that because it almost happened in 2007, and the market tanked, and that changed a lot of things. And it delayed it for 6 years, but what it did is it changed everything in a really good way, because in 2006, that was being driven almost, not exclusively, but in a large part it was being driven by developers whose interests are exclusively monetary, which is fine. Development needs to happen to bring cities along, but at the same time, maybe not the heartbeat of the effort that's happening. So when the market tanked, the developers, they had to get on their heels and they had to figure things out. And it's not to say that they're not playing a role again, and they certainly are, and that's a good thing. But what happened in that period of time is everyone else that had moved here under the auspice of the Renaissance is happening, and everyone else that had their fire stoked, that had been here all along, that it was happening, that flame didn't go out over the last 6 or 7 years. That flame got brighter, and it started to produce a community. So now that it's coming all back around, like, it's sustained. The desire inside of our community to foster something greater sustained through when the economic interest wasn't there. And now it's going to come back up, and it's going to be fostered, and we're really going to take off. So just to speak to that point. And now, I'm graduating college, and it's bleak. It's so bleak. I'm not the kind of guy that really applies for jobs anyway, truth be told. So hanging satellite dishes, that starts to dry out. I have a house, I have a wife. I'm like, I can't even make any money to pay my mortgage. I have a neighbor, she works at Trader Joe's. She's like, maybe you want to do this? Yes. So I get a job at Trader Joe's. And it's like a flex schedule. I'm 29 or 30 at that point, and just not cool with a flex schedule. So I come to them and I say, I need a set schedule, and this is what I'm willing to do. I will work the 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. shift, and I'll do it in the milk freezer 5 days a week. But this is it. This is my offer. Otherwise, I gotta leave. And they were like, "We'll take you up on it." So, so I get out of hot water a little bit. Although now I'm making less than amazing money for a mortgage holder. But whatever. It is what it is. It's a steady job, right? In a grocery store after going back to school at 26 to get my undergraduate, because that is the American dream. So let that sink in. That's the dream. So I'm doing this thing, and I have no traction, no traction. And I can remember getting up at 2 a.m. every day and driving myself into work, and how deeply emotional an experience it was for me. I am definitely a ruminator, for sure. And it definitely can it gets heavy. And those were the mornings where it was so heavy. And I can remember, I love super avant-garde music, and I love American Appalachian music, but I also really love Katy Perry. And pop music, like love, not it's not a passive thing. Like I'm very passionate about how much I like music that communicates to the masses. I definitely grew up an indie rocker for sure, and that whole part thing, that was another like big conflict in transitioning out of feeling like I'm living in this like small ass community over here. Like, why can't I understand that I grew up with 9 people? And realizing that my desire ultimately isn't that. Like my desire is to speak to like people that don't look like that at all. My desire is to speak to people on the bus stop. You know, to really kind of have something be broader in a greater sense. I'm so sorry. It's these moments where the Men in Black button gets stronger because there's so many people looking back at me. Like sometimes when it's just one, I do this with one person all the time, and I kind of like totally blank out.
How'd you start?
So pixelated. So here we go. I'm gonna accelerate through it. Thanks for putting me back on where we're trying to get. You just said the destination. The destination is. So at any rate, I graduate. I'm working at Trader Joe's. In the morning, it's just like it's so overwhelming because you have this hunch that you have a capacity. You know that you're worth this in life. Like, I know that I'm worth this in life. And I just want something to come on my plate that I can put my hands in the soil and have an impact. Like regardless how small it is, you just want to actually impact something. And that's what was escaping me, and it was so overwhelming. So Katy Perry blaring, and I'm like crying, driving to work at 2 in the morning for like the absolute waste of fulfilling my personal potential, being like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you know that you can have this kind of like traction in life. You know that you can impact this. Like, you feel it. You know that it's there, and you can't get the gears to catch. And that's so overwhelming, and it's so scary, and it's so frightening. And that was me. So that's the rumination. That's the period. I finally got an offer from UMBC to leave Trader Joe's and come help them build one show that was going to travel, that was going to be endorsed or funded by the National Endowment for Humanities. And that got me super psyched, and I cold called a firm, an art handling firm that I wanted to work for, and had cold called a million times before. And for whatever reason, that day, I got through. And the reason I got through is because I was psyched, because I had the other thing work out at UMBC. And my aura, my perspective was different, and I was gonna have that conversation land. And it landed, and they were like, you should come in and meet with us. And then I got that job. So in one afternoon, I went from being a milk stocker to being an art handler. It was great, until I spent time as an art handler. And that's just like a glorified truck driver. So, driving hundreds of millions of dollars with Picassos around. I drove the Emancipation Proclamation through the night from Washington, D.C. to Detroit, nonstop, third most important document in the United States, like beacon on the dashboard, armed guards, like all that kind of stuff, and not really a high-paying experience necessarily, and that's fine too. It's an incredible craft, but it wasn't something that was going to sit with me. So after about a year of doing that, I told a friend about an idea that I hadn't experienced a decade before on a lawn in Maine at a wedding. It was kind of like, not a photo booth. It was like a photo setup, like a backdrop, and there was an analog camera and that kind of thing. But what always stuck with us was it was open to everyone, and there was a stool, and there was a cane, and there was maybe a top hat. And it wasn't really props, but it was performative. And No one even saw the photos because it was analog, and they made one set of copies and they gave it to the bride and groom. I saw it like years later, but that didn't matter. Everyone knew that they were amazing because they had been there participating in it, and they could feel it in their stomach. That idea of, I'm doing this thing and those people are watching me and they have a smile on their face. So if I'm doing this and they have a smile on their face, that means that like, people are smiling at me, but I'm not even smiling at them, like they're smiling at me. And it makes you feel good about yourself. So I had thought about it every 2 years and 4 months over that decade, and I shared the idea with a friend who is of more entrepreneurial spirit than I am. That's not what I wanted to do. I just wanted to make art. And sell it a lot, obviously. Aside from that, not have to do anything. So I brought the idea to him, we kicked it around a few times, and I was like, no, our families are too close. If this went sour, like, our kids like each other, like, it just won't be, our wives are best friends. So we fought for it for a year. He went out to a wedding, had the experience with a business partner of his, and came back from Chicago and said, we gotta have a beer. And he was like, I went to Chicago, I went to this wedding, there was a photo booth there, now I understand what you've been telling me about, like I feel it, and I'm gonna start this business. And I want you to start it with me, but if you don't, I'm taking your idea. And at that point, I was a year into handling art, and I was doing really well at the firm, and I really loved the work a lot, but I just realized that I was gonna have babies. I didn't at that point, but I was gonna have kids, and I was gonna do that stuff, and I knew that it wasn't going to be the solution for the long term of my life. I wasn't gonna be able to stay there, and I thought, well, I didn't do anything through my 20s to help myself financially, and then after having the levity and the insight of my 20s, I still went and got an art degree. And that has clearly not worked out so well. So like, I might as well start a photo booth company. So it was 3 of us that started Pixelated, and we started it in someone's garage with the idea of building something that was really beautiful. Because we thought that the pipe and drape or the plastic boxed photo booths that are kind of ripping off the boardwalk photo booths were ugly. And we wanted to make something that felt very beautiful inside of a beautiful event space. Something that would feel complementary to a really beautiful event space. And then we wanted to make sure that the media that we produced, the photos that we were capturing, were exceptional. So they were as good, or close to as good, as the wedding photographers that are producing photos. Because the verb inside of those photos is just as important. It's just as qualitative. It shows just as much about the family and their relationships and new people that are meeting each other. So it shouldn't be grainy and black and white. They should be exceptional. So we use really incredible equipment, and then we use really incredible printers. So that way the photo strip prints that we produce, they don't gray and shrivel up over time. They stay really consistent, really constant. So wanting to really elevate an amazing product. We spent 3 years doing that. How where am I? 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Yeah, I got it. So we spent 3 years will be our New Year's. Building this company, serving events, building a robust events company. We now operate in Washington, D.C., in Baltimore, which is our home and our headquarters, Philadelphia, and we also have a satellite location in San Francisco. At the moment, we're feeling really good about the amount of cities that we're serving events in. Now we are pivoting our attention to the next chapter in our lives. So Katie acknowledged that I dropped photo booth off of my card, and that's because Pixelated has become something far greater than Pixelated photo booth. So while the people who work under our photo booth company, like exclusively their cards still carry that, it's fitting for me to drop that so that way I can change the conversation that's happening about our brand. So in about 6 weeks, our photo booths, which are right up front, I would encourage all of you to take a lot of pictures while you're there. Our photo booths will go on the market for sale internationally. So we designed them from the ground up, and we curated all the equipment inside. So the next thing to come online is our photo booths for sale for people that would want to operate small photo booth businesses, or PR or marketing firms that would want to buy a fleet of them and take them to their events, or for commercial openings for real estate or trade shows to do their list building for them. Now we're learning how our product can drive marketing and branding metrics for people inside the space, like wiping the Pixelated off of the photo booth and putting Boeing on and selling them a fleet so that way they can do outbound stuff. That's one of the spots. We're also developing a version of our product that'll be for commercial spaces. It'll be something that's more wall-mounted and cool, and it'll be there to help brand local businesses. Like for instance, Doobies could put one on the wall, and it could be hooked to your Twitter, and it could be hooked to your Facebook, and it could be hooked to Foursquare, so it's driving geotagging for you. And you can be building an email list passively. The photo strips that are coming out are going to be branded with Doobies. The email can say, if you're going to share this, make sure that you point it at Doobies and hashtag it Doobies Coffee Rules, or whatever the marketing campaign could be. Behind that, we're developing our own software platform. We've worked on all of the best that are out there, and they're not the best. And we feel like we have the space to really go into that place and take all the insight from running 500 events and assessing all these other platforms and really make a great platform. Spinning off from there, I felt like I started Pixelated and I left making art and music, and now it's coming full circle for sure. We just got a space on Cross Street in Federal Hill that's right on Cross Street Market, and we're definitely going to operate it very much like a sales room for our products, but our products are very beautiful, so they're interesting inside the space. But more so what we're going to do is we're going to open an art gallery, which is wicked cool. To think that I started out leaving art and being like, I got to ditch this thing because I have to figure out my life. And inside of 3 years, I'm circling on tying it right back in, which is feels exciting and very much of the spirit of the way that Pixelated has worked. I fully expect all of the desires that I've ever had in other places to fold back into what my efforts are now. I think that Pixelated has been the clarifying lens through which I understand how to get results out of any effort inside of my life, and that's something that wasn't there before. So when I launch my exhibition, I'll know how to talk about it, and I won't be ashamed to talk about it or to say that I'm doing something that I think deserves someone else paying attention to, and that's something that I didn't have before I went through this process. That's something that it escaped me for whatever reason. I couldn't make that transition happen, and I never in a million years would have thought that moving into entrepreneurship would be the thing that would inspire me to see the real potential that I have, and it has fully and completely restructured my brain in the best possible way, and I couldn't be more stoked